Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to have a look at what I mean when I say something is a better printer than another printer, because lots of people ask me, I'd like the best printer. Well, unless they give me a lot more information, I just tell them to go and buy an Epson P20000. Now, the fact that that's a 60-inch printer, I couldn't get it in my house and it costs quite a lot of money, is neither here nor there. You asked for the best printer, I've answered your question. Now, most people actually give a little bit more information than that, which rules out the P20000. But I have in printer reviews, and I've done quite a lot of printer reviews now, both my written ones for the last 10, 12 years, or well, no, actually nearly 14, 15 years of printer reviews. And I say that one printer is good, another printer is a very good printer. What do I actually mean by that? Somebody asked me a question about this, and they asked, could I do a comparison between two printers I've actually got in the office here at the moment. There's the Epson P5000, which is a pigment ink printer, has 10 inks, 17 inch. And I've also got the Canon TC20M. Now that's a relatively basic printer, but it's a 24-inch printer, but it only has four dye-based ink, it only has 4 pigment inks. Which is best? Is one better than the other? No, they are different printers. Now, I'll come back later on in the video as to what I mean when I say good prints, good print quality, and some of the things that you can use to decide whether printer features mean something to you. But the whole point of it is that it's apples v oranges to try and compare two printers like this. It is not fair on either printer really, because one is going to be quite cheap, that's the TC20, because it's an ink tank printer. It has 4 inks, you fill that up. It's got roll, 24-inch roll on it, takes sheet paper, only to A3 size though. So, that's flexible there. The P5000 needs black ink swap if I'm swapping between glossy and matte papers. It has a few foibles of its own, needs regular use. But by any reasonable criteria of print quality, I'm going to expect the P5000 to be miles better. Canon wouldn't argue with me on that, and Epson would say, well, hang on, it's apples and oranges. They're two different markets they're aimed at. Different types of printers. So why can't I produce a set of numbers that describe the characteristics of printers? Now, the example given to me was that, well, you can do that for cameras. Yeah, sure, you can do that for some aspects of cameras. There are things like DxO mark scores. Now, I have a look at these, I have a mild interest in them. I'm not going to actually look at dynamic range, ISO, noise and settings and stuff like this in any great detail in my camera choices. I'm simply not interested in that. That doesn't make much of a difference to me from my photography point of view. And we won't even get into the interminable arguments about different brands. The moment somebody says, I'm going to stop using a particular brand and use a different brand, and they get harangued online for it. Now, I've got no interest in that, and I've no desire to set up anything like that in printing. More to the point, I don't think you could. And people say, well, yeah, there must be numbers. Well, comparing printers, if you're comparing print output, you're not really just comparing printers. You're comparing a printer, the paper you're using, the profile you're using, and if it's images, then you're comparing the type of image, how well the image has been edited. Now, I always suggest using test images like this. Now, this particular one is a very wide gamut image, and this will show up issues with printers with fewer inks in them. It's specifically meant to be an extremely challenging and difficult print to be able to reproduce. It's done like that on purpose. If I take an image like this of the seagull here, now the colours here, they don't stretch the gamut of anything really. Any decent modern printer can print this. So this particular one here, this is another test image I use a lot, and this one was printed on the TC20. This is on a luster photo paper. That looks fine. Now, I can see some issues with it. I can see a little, ever so slight bit of bronzing. The black and white is not bang on neutral. And I suppose in a way I could measure some of those and I could give you charts of tables for different printers. But that's mostly meaningless because the problem is it's easy enough to generate data about printers, and I do that when I'm creating profiles. Here we've got some profiling charts, and this is a profiling chart for this is a 310 gram cotton fine art paper, smooth finish. This is the profiling chart for this, the TC20. That looks fairly good. Now, if I get a hand lens out and look at it, I'll see maybe some details of how the ink dots are arranged, things like, yeah, that's fair enough. I can create a profile for this. I can create a gamut chart for it. Now, the gamut chart, and I've got several examples I show occasionally. I recently compared, for example, the gamut chart between the Epson P8500 I tested with 6 inks in it, 6 against the P5000 here. And the difference is quite clear, but you'd expect that. Lots more inks, different market, so it's a different thing. But what about these numbers that some people would like to see? Can I generate the numbers? Yes, but as I said, the problem is to have them in a meaningful form where people could use them to decide on one printer is better or more, as they likely would, to argue about the validity of the numbers and whether their favourite printer looks better than something. Yeah, that's what these numbers tend to get used for. Yeah, I could generate numbers, but to come up with a robust, reliable and meaningful, and I cannot emphasize the meaningful bit enough, and meaningful framework for analysing printer performance, it would be a mammoth, pretty much thankless task, and it would be out of date in 2 or 3 years as new printer technologies came along. I also think I would lose the will to live if I had to start doing testing like that. I am simply not interested in it. Now, if that means that you're going to say, I'm sorry, Keith, because you don't have lots of charts and tables and data in your printer reviews, they're no good. Well, bye, because you're not going to get them. I don't think they are meaningful. They are relevant if you understand the data, and that takes quite a bit of work. Now, if you really want to understand a lot of the stuff about colour management, details and things, how to analyse things like that, I've got Real World Colour Management. I've recommended it numerous times. Fraser et al. Brilliant book. You'll be able to find it second hand. Read this and you will understand an awful lot more about the intricacies of how printers work, what they do, different things. Because as I said, when I compare printers, look at printers, I'm looking at the ink set, I'm looking at the profiling quality, for example. That means that I can't even go, well, I'll take the same paper and I'll try it on different printers. Now, I can't remember which one this was. This was printed on an ink tank printer. I believe it was an Epson 4-colour one, and it looks fine. Is that a good print? On this paper, which is a smooth matte paper, yeah, that's a good print. Now, I happen to know from this image that the colours are quite strong in this, so if I printed it on a better printer, or maybe a more appropriate or better paper, I might have an image that looks better. But on its own, how does it? It looks fine. Does the print work for what you want? Probably. So it's very difficult to actually meaningfully say that I'll use the same paper and I'll try that paper in every different printer and I'll measure things like that, because different printers work better with different papers. So the Epson ET18100, which I can confidently say is the best 13-inch ink tank printer, dye-based ink for printing glossy luster colour photos. I don't have any difficulty with that, because it's quite easy to say it's the best because there's no significant competition for it in that. Likewise, I could say that the Canon Pro 200, because it's got more inks in it, is the best in terms of its printer gamut and how prints look on various papers, because there are no equivalents. There's nothing close to it in terms of dye-based printers. They're easy ones. They're easy wins. It's easy to take the extremes of a particular range, narrow that range by having criteria such as ink tank printer, 13-inch or whatever like that, and then say, well, yes, that's easily the best. Yeah, occasionally I can do that. most of the time, the answer is always, which is best? Well, it depends on what you actually want. So I've got potential data. I get this from when I'm doing profiling. So what about, what do I mean? What is best? What is good? What's a good print? A good print to me shows no obvious deficiencies. Now, the deficiencies can show up in various ways, but they're not always due to the printer. So I might try printing this image, and if the profile is not so good, I may get banding in it. Now, I don't get banding in my prints because I know what I'm doing when I'm editing them, and I know about the colour management and how the different papers perform. That's skill in using the printer, not necessarily that the printer is any better. So I've got test prints. I say that one there's a particularly tricky one. This is the standard test print I print on every single printer. I know the image well enough, I can look for problems. There is no, this is printed, as I say, on the 4-colour TC20. It looks fine. Let's say there's a tiny little bit of bronzing on the ink there. I can see if I get the light at the right angle. Nobody's going to notice that. The colours, they don't look wrong. They don't have any nasty gradients in them. It has profiled well, and I've got a good picture there. But other pictures, well, here's another one here printed on, the same as images over in the back there. Yeah, is that a good print? If I gave this to the architect that designed it, what would they say? Well, I know because it was a commercial picture. And for their point of view, they really liked it. They liked the strong blue. They liked the whites in it. They liked the composition. They liked how it showed the context of the building and various other parts of it. Notice that not one person would actually look at, who was actually looking at the photo, would actually look at details of the print quality. Now, if I look at this very carefully and compare it to one at the back here, and this was printed on an Epson P7500, so, you know, a 12-colour ink printer, by my definitions, a very nice printer to use and a very good printer, but a huge printer and an expensive printer, and I'll come back to the issue of cost in a bit. If I look at this, and this was printed on an Epson EcoTank printer, I can see perhaps a slight bit of unevenness in some of the shadow detail. Now, I see that because I do a lot of prints, but that's the sort of thing I'd mention in a review anyway, the different types. But it could just be that my choice of paper here was a poor one for this particular printer, and that if I used the right paper, such as this matte paper here, if I used that, then I would get far better results. Does that mean that the printer is a bad one? No, not really. It just means that the printer has specific uses. There are some things the printer is good for, some things the printer is less good for. Now, I try and bring these things out when I do reviews, particularly if you look at my ET 18100 or L18050 printer review, I bring out the points about the media choices. Similarly for the Epson ET 8550. Once again, an excellent printer, 13-inch, built-in scanner and all bits and pieces, great printer, but you do have to be careful with your paper choices to get the very best results out of it. How would I quantify that? It would be very difficult to put that into numbers. It would be, well, it would be exceedingly difficult because, as I said, I really would not have the will to carry out detailed testing like that. If you want that sort of stuff, buy the kit, do the measurements yourself on things, or I can sometimes supply profile data, which people can, if you've got the software, you can do the analysis. But I'm afraid if you're after numbers, simple, do it for me numbers like DxO mark numbers, then you're not going to get them for printers. It just doesn't mean anything. Now, if somebody comes up with a robust enough system for analysing printers and can convince me of the rigour of the methodology and its relevance, once again, has to be relevant and meaningful, then I will happily go along with it. But I just can't see how you can do it. So, I mentioned best die printers. Easy choice to do that one. What do I mean by, fundamentally, what is a good print? Well, to me, a good print is one that I'll happily put on the wall. So any of these ones here. There's one over there, another one, and there's a few prints on the wall. They are prints that I'm happy with. They show no technical issues, so they don't show any banding, they don't show any uneven inking, they don't show any obvious reflection problems of the inks. But if I'm honest about it, the real criteria that gets one put up on the wall here is it's an image that I personally like, and that's a good print. Now, all right, I can't quantify that at all. There's a black and white one here in Wells Cathedral. I've got several prints I've done testing on this seagull here. Now, is that a good print? Well, I think it is, because it was taken in 2004 when I was first got particular camera system, and this was taken on a beach somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. It's just a seagull. But have I got a good print of it that looks right? Yeah, I've got some great looking prints from that. But that's a personal thing. And this comes back to that bit about saying that there is only so much you can do by actually getting the print right. At a certain point, it's about the image as well as the print. Now, there are bad prints, and bad prints can be rarely because the printer's not that great, but more likely it's due to your choice of paper, your profiling or lack of profiling. It's also perhaps more likely due to your entire level of skill in using the printer. Now, bad prints, I make bad prints. I have to be careful when I say, oh, this print doesn't look very good, and there'll be reasons such as banding, bad colour, something like that. I have to be careful that it's not an example of my ineptitude and me not knowing how to use the printer properly, as opposed to a problem of the printer. And I'm quite clear in this one that any printer 13 inches and above in width that is currently on the market is capable of making great prints. The limitation in prints is very much going to be in user skill. As I say, that counts for me as well. So they're all good. What's the point of doing the reviews? Well, the better the printer, and that usually comes down to cost and complexity, the better is the more potentially you can get out of it. So why would somebody buy, let's just take two printers, the Epson P7500, big 24-inch printer, 12 ink, pigment inks, fine art printer by any other name, really nice printer. Why would you buy that or an Epson ET8550? Well, if you've got the money and, and can use it, and you've got the space, well, buy yourself a P7500 or 7570, I believe it is in the US. But if you're new to printing, you're never going to get the best out of it. I now use, for a lot of my architectural work, I recently got a Fujifilm GFX 100S. And yes, that's a better camera. If I'd had that camera years ago, well, apart from lots of people being astounded at 100 megapixels, did I have the skills to get the best out of it? Unlikely. You learn skills, certainly in photography. My photography skills have advanced over the years. If I was to compare, say, GFX 100 with my little 100D, or the one that Karen uses, I use it when I'm taking pictures to include in reviews and various things like that. What's the difference between them? Well, you can look up on DP Review or something like that, and you'll find loads of figures about the details of them and, the old technology of the 100D or something. Well, you may think, well, it's obvious the 100D is much worse. But it's all about how you use it. Now, the numbers exist for cameras because people can do such stuff and do such stuff. The numbers like that do not exist for printers. Simple bit about printing, usability. Take, for example, the Canon Pro 10 pigment ink printer, the Canon Pro 300, much newer pigment ink printer. Essentially, they are the same print head and the same ink system, so there's no difference there. Why do I say one is a vastly better printer, from my point of view, than the other? One has no controls on it, bar a couple of buttons or anything. The other one has a screen on it. It gives you information, it's easier to set. So usability is one of those things. What makes a better printer? A more usable printer. Why more usable? Because you're more likely to get good results out of it. Now, the Pro 10 has its fans, and if you've got one and it's giving you good results, then great. But I find in so many ways the Pro 300, although from a print point of view, not actually that much different. From using a printer to make nice prints point of view, it's just vastly different. So there you have it, different things like that. If you've got the money, buy the stuff. I would say if you've got the money and you really want to learn how to use a printer like this, I do one-to-one in the UK on-site training for printing, colour management and stuff like that. I put some details in the notes for it. But that's really if you want to go for high-end stuff, because when it comes to showing print differences, I cannot show easily on video, even if I take photographs of it, I cannot show the precise details of prints differences without looking at them close under good lighting. The differences are that subtle. Now, to my mind, they show in the large as well, they make for a better looking print. But remember this, that if I took a print, let's say of this seagull here, printed it on the P5000 on a good luster photo paper, printed it on the TC20 here on a good luster photo paper with good profiles on each, and I put the prints next to each other, there are probably various things I could point out to you why the print looked better that came off the P5000. That's when they're next to each other. If I had a well-lit room and stuck one print, let's say we do each one at 17 by 24 or something like that, stuck one at the far end of the room and one on the wall here, and let you have a look at one, then walk down the room, have a look at the other and tell me what differences. Most people are not going to notice any difference whatsoever. None whatsoever. So it's all about context. Now, I hope my meanderings on this subject make it a little bit clearer what I'm looking at when I go for print quality. But if you are of a nature and want numbers to compare, if you buy your hi-fi based on reading the specifications and things like that, then I am dreadfully sorry. You're not going to get as much as you could out of my printer reviews and paper reviews and general photography reviews. There is a place for the data. Obviously there is. I make profiles and things. But there's a certain point where you just have to go, does that look good? Yeah, that looks good. Am I happy with it? Yes. Is there anything wrong with it I can see? No. That's a good print. And that's what it comes down to. Spend less time poring over tables of data and charts and more time taking photos and learning how to get the best out of prints, because to me still a photo is a real photo when it's a big print, whatever you print it on. Anyway, if you've got any questions, please do let me know, because as I say, it was somebody's questions that actually sort of set me off on this lengthy diatribe about printing. So there you go. I hope it's been of some interest. Congratulations to those of you who've made it to the end, and thanks for watching.